The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Every screen on Earth, from the smallest personal device to the massive displays in city centers, flickered and went dark. Then came the face of High Chancellor Vextar, his scaled features twisted into what might have been a smile on his reptilian face. "Humans of Earth," he began, his voice translated into every language simultaneously. "The Galactic Coalition has watched your species with growing concern. You expanded too quickly. You took too much. You asked too many questions. This ends now." In the Strategic Defense Command Center beneath Geneva, Commander Han Jiho stood perfectly still, his jaw clenched as he watched the broadcast. Around him, dozens of officers and analysts sat frozen at their stations. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. "We offer you a choice," Vextar continued. "Surrender 80% of your resources to the Coalition. Dismantle your military forces. Accept your place as servants to the greater galactic community. You have 72 hours to comply." He leaned forward and his next words came out almost gleefully. "Or we will remove you from the galaxy permanently. Choose wisely, little humans." The screens went black. For 3 seconds, silence held the command center. Then everyone started talking at once. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the lunar bases. The Coalition has positioned a fleet at the edge of the solar system." "How many ships?" Han Jiho asked quietly. The young analyst's face went pale. "Early scans suggest at least 10,000 warships, sir." Someone whispered a curse. Earth's entire fleet numbered barely 400 ships. The math was simple and brutal. Han Jiho turned to his communications officer. "Get me Ambassador Park Daeho. I don't care if he's still at the Coalition station or on his way back. I need him now." Across the solar system on a transport ship racing back toward Earth, Ambassador Park Daeho watched the same broadcast for the 5th time. His hands shook slightly as he held his tablet. 30 years he'd spent building relationships with alien species. 30 years of careful diplomacy, of proving that humanity could be trusted, that they were ready to join the galactic community as equals. All of it meant nothing now. "Ambassador?" His aide stood in the doorway. "Commander Han is calling for you." Park Daeho nodded slowly. "Tell him I'll be there in 3 hours. And tell him I failed." The aide started to protest, but Park Daeho waved him away. He knew the truth. He'd seen the signs. The Coalition had always viewed humans as dangerous upstarts. Too curious, too aggressive, too unpredictable. He'd spent years trying to prove them wrong, but perhaps he'd been fooling himself all along. By the time Park Daeho's ship landed in Geneva, the World Council was already in emergency session. He walked into a room filled with shouting voices and angry faces. Every nation on Earth was represented here, and every representative had the same question: what do we do? "We negotiate," someone shouted. "We can't fight them." "We can't surrender either," another voice countered. "They're asking us to give up everything that makes us free." "Better alive and enslaved than dead and free." "That's easy for you to say." "Order!" The council chairman's voice cut through the chaos. "Ambassador Park, you've dealt with these species for decades. What are our options?" All eyes turned to Park Daeho. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. "I spoke with Chancellor Vextar 3 weeks ago," he said quietly. "I asked him directly if the Coalition had concerns about humanity's expansion. He laughed at me, said humans were like children playing with their parents' tools, making messes we didn't understand." "So we're going to surrender?" someone asked bitterly. "I didn't say that." Park Daeho looked around the room. "I'm telling you that they never saw us as equals. They never will. If we surrender now, we'll be slaves forever. They'll take everything and give us nothing. Our children will grow up serving masters who see them as animals." The room fell silent. "But if we fight," a representative said slowly, "we all die." "Maybe." Park Daeho sat down heavily. "But at least we die free." Commander Han Jiho entered the chamber then, still wearing his uniform from the command center. He'd been awake for 18 hours straight. "May I speak?" The chairman nodded. Han Jiho walked to the front of the room. He didn't use notes or a prepared speech. He simply spoke from his heart. "I'm a soldier. I've spent my entire adult life preparing for war, hoping I'd never have to fight one. I've lost friends to conflicts over resources, over territory, over stupid pride. I know what war costs." He paused. "But I also know what slavery costs. My grandmother lived through the last great war on Earth. She told me something I never forgot. She said the only thing worse than dying for freedom is living without it. He looked at each council member in turn. The coalition thinks we're weak because we're new to space. They think our small fleet means we'll roll over and accept whatever they demand. They think we're like every other species they've conquered, too afraid to fight back. His voice hardened. They're wrong. You have a plan? The chairman asked. I have several plans, Hanjiho said. And I have something the coalition doesn't know about. He pulled up a holographic display. For the last 20 years, Dr. Kang Mirai and her team have been developing something we called Project Longshot. We didn't tell the coalition about it. We didn't tell anyone outside the military. We built it in secret, scattered throughout the asteroid belt, hidden on remote moons buried under ice. The hologram showed a massive railgun installation, one of dozens hidden throughout the solar system. These are mass drivers, Hanjiho explained. They can accelerate tungsten rods to 90% the speed of light. At that velocity, each projectile hits with the force of a nuclear weapon, and because they're moving so fast, there's no warning, no time to dodge, no shields that can stop them. How many do we have? Someone asked. 247 installations, Hanjiho said. Each one can fire every 30 seconds. The coalition fleet is massive, but it's also clustered together because they don't think we're a threat. If we hit them now while they're confident, while they're not expecting resistance, he let the implication hang in the air. You're talking about killing thousands of beings, a representative said quietly. I'm talking about survival, Hanjiho replied. They came here to enslave or destroy us. I'm suggesting we show them that was a mistake. The debate went on for 6 more hours. Representatives argued and shouted and pleaded. Some wanted peace at any price. Others wanted to fight no matter the cost. But slowly, steadily, the mood in the room shifted. Finally, the chairman called for a vote. It was unanimous. Hanjiho returned to the command center to prepare. Dr. Kang Mirai met him there, her face tired but determined. The longshot systems are ready, she said. We've been running simulations for months. We can do this. Good. Hanjiho sat down at his command station. Prepare a message. Broadcast it on all coalition frequencies. Make sure every ship in their fleet hears it. 10 minutes later, Hanjiho's face appeared on every screen in the coalition armada. His expression was cold and calm. Behind him, Earth rotated slowly in the darkness of space. High Chancellor Vextar, he began. You gave us a choice. Chains or death. You thought we'd beg for mercy. You thought we'd surrender everything our ancestors built, everything they fought for, everything they died to protect. He leaned forward slightly. You should have studied our history more carefully. We've faced extinction before, plague, war, environmental collapse. We survived all of it by refusing to give up. By fighting when fighting seemed impossible. He paused, letting his words sink in. You chose war? Now you'll learn its price. We are humanity, and we do not kneel. The transmission ended. In the coalition flagship, High Chancellor Vextar stared at the blank screen. Then he laughed. Brave words from dead species, he said. Begin the attack. He never saw the tungsten rods coming. The coalition fleet moved forward with absolute confidence. 10,000 warships advancing on a species that barely had 400. The formation was perfect. Textbook military procedure from a civilization that had fought and won 100 wars across the galaxy. High Chancellor Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. In 36 hours they would reach Earth. The humans would see the fleet, understand their situation, and beg for mercy. It always happened this way. Chancellor, his tactical officer said, should we maintain defensive protocols? Vextar waved a clawed hand dismissively. Against what? They have no weapons that can reach us at this distance. No technology we haven't seen before. Maintain standard formation. Let them see our power. That was his first mistake. 3,000 light seconds away, deep in the asteroid belt, Dr. Kang Mirai sat in the primary control center of Longshot Station 1. Around her, dozens of technicians monitored screens showing data streams from 247 hidden installations scattered throughout the solar system. All stations report ready, her assistant said. Targeting solutions uploaded. Power levels at maximum. Dr. Kang Mirai pulled up the firing sequence on her screen. Each installation would fire in a carefully calculated pattern. The tungsten rods had been launched hours ago. accelerating silently through space at 90% light speed. The Coalition fleet had no idea death was already racing toward them. She thought about the calculations she'd spent 20 years perfecting. Kinetic energy equations, trajectory planning, heat dissipation. While other species had focused on energy weapons and shield technology, humanity had taken a different path. They'd remembered the lessons of history. Sometimes the oldest weapons were the most effective. A simple metal rod moving fast enough could destroy anything. "Dr. Kang," Commander Han Jiho's voice came through her headset. "You may fire when ready." She took a deep breath. "All stations, this is Longshot Prime. Execute firing sequence Omega. Fire." Her finger pressed the button. Nothing seemed to happen. The screen showed green lights indicating successful launches, but there was no sound, no flash, no dramatic explosion. Just silent acknowledgement that the weapons were away. "Time to impact, 42 seconds, someone reported. Dr. Kang Mireille watched the countdown timer. She'd spent 2 decades building this system. Now she would see if it worked. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, everything happened at once. The sensors screamed warnings. The tactical officer looked up in confusion. "Chancellor, we're detecting multiple high-velocity objects inbound." He never finished the sentence. The first tungsten rod hit the shields of a Coalition destroyer at 270,000 kilometers per second. At that speed, the shields might as well have been tissue paper. The rod punched through the shields, through the hull, through the fusion reactors at the ship's core and out the other side. The destroyer simply ceased to exist, transformed instantly into a cloud of superheated plasma. Then the second rod hit, and the third, and the fourth. All across the Coalition formation, ships began exploding. There was no warning, no time to evade. The projectiles were too fast, too small to track effectively. One moment a warship existed. The next moment it was debris. "Evasive action," Vextar screamed. "All ships scatter." But scattering took time. The fleet needed to break formation, coordinate new positions, avoid colliding with each other. And in space combat, even a few seconds could be fatal. The tungsten rods kept coming, wave after wave of relativistic death. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. Ships that weren't hit directly were still damaged by the expanding plasma clouds of their destroyed neighbors. In 90 seconds, 3,000 Coalition warships were destroyed or crippled. Captain Lee Soman watched the tactical display from the bridge of Earth's flagship, the ESS Indomitable. She stood perfectly still, arms crossed, face expressionless. Around her, the crew worked in disciplined silence. "Enemy fleet is scattering," Lieutenant Choi Hyunwoo reported from the tactical station. "Their formation is breaking up. Multiple ships colliding. Their communications are chaos." "Good," Captain Lee said quietly. "Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 2. 400 human warships began moving forward. They'd been hiding among the asteroids, their heat signatures masked, their reactors running at minimum power. Now they activated their engines and began hunting. The Coalition had bigger ships, better shields, more powerful weapons, but they were confused and panicking. And humanity had spent the last month preparing for this exact moment. "Target the crippled vessels first," Captain Lee ordered. "I want boarding parties ready. Any ship we can capture intact becomes ours." "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Choi acknowledged. The human ships moved like predators through the wreckage. They didn't engage in fair fights. They attacked damaged ships, vessels that were trying to rescue survivors, supply craft that had minimal defenses. They were efficient and ruthless. Major Kim Yoonji led the first boarding party onto a crippled Coalition cruiser. Her Marine squad moved through the damaged corridors with practiced efficiency. Most of the alien crew was dead or injured from the initial impact. The survivors surrendered quickly. "Ship secure," she reported. "Engineering is intact. We can fly this thing." "Copy that," Captain Lee responded. "Get it operational. We're collecting quite a fleet." By the end of the first day, humanity had captured or destroyed 5,000 enemy ships. The remaining Coalition vessels retreated to the edge of the solar system, trying to regroup and figure out what had just happened. High Chancellor Vextar's flagship had survived, but barely. The bridge was scarred with burn marks. Half his senior officers were dead. And his confidence was gone, replaced by something he hadn't felt in decades: fear. "How?" he demanded. "How did they do this?" His science officer pulled up analysis data with shaking hands. "The projectiles were simple tungsten rods, Chancellor. But they were traveling at relativistic speeds. At that velocity, mass becomes a devastating weapon. Our shields couldn't stop them. Our sensors couldn't track them until impact. And they fired from installations we never detected. They had this capability all along? Vextar felt cold dread settling in his chest. They let us think they were weak? It appears so, Chancellor. Vextar slumped in his command chair. He'd studied human history, but only superficially. He knew they'd fought wars among themselves, but he dismissed it as primitive savagery. Now he understood his mistake. Humans hadn't just fought wars. They'd perfected warfare over thousands of years. They'd learned every dirty trick, every tactical advantage, every way to turn weakness into strength, and they'd hidden their capabilities until the perfect moment to strike. Open a channel to Earth, Vextar said quietly. We need to negotiate. Commander Hanjiho's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but satisfied. Yes, Chancellor? I'm prepared to discuss terms, Vextar began. No, Hanjiho interrupted. You don't understand your situation. You came to our home demanding surrender. You threatened us with extinction. You gave us no choice but war. His voice hardened. You started this. We'll decide when it ends. You can't fight the entire coalition, Vextar protested. We still have 40,000 ships across the galaxy. Then you better call them home, Hanjiho said. Because we're coming for you. The transmission ended. On the Indomitable, Captain Lee Summon received new orders from Earth. Her crew looked at her expectantly. We're not stopping at the solar system, she announced. Command wants us to take the fight to them. We're going deep into coalition space. Lieutenant Choi Hyun-woo looked up from his station. Sir, we're outnumbered 100 to 1 out there. Captain Lee smiled grimly. Good, then they'll never see us coming. Humanity didn't survive this long by fighting fair. We survived by being smarter, faster, and more vicious than anything hunting us. She looked around at her crew. The coalition wanted war. Let's give them one they'll never forget. The human fleet began moving outward, leaving behind a graveyard of destroyed coalition ships. They'd won the first battle, but the real war was just beginning. Dr. Kang Mirai watched them go from her control station. She'd built the weapons that won the battle. Now others would carry the fight forward. She felt no pride in the destruction, only grim satisfaction. Humanity had been pushed to the edge. They'd responded the only way they could, with overwhelming, calculated violence, and they were just getting started. The ESS Indomitable slipped through coalition space like a ghost. Captain Lee Summon had ordered all non-essential systems shut down. The ship ran cold and dark, its heat signature barely distinguishable from background radiation. Only the bridge remained active, lit by the soft glow of tactical displays. Enemy patrol ahead, Lieutenant Choi Hyun-woo whispered, even though the enemy was thousands of kilometers away and couldn't possibly hear them. 4 cruisers, standard formation. They're scanning, but they haven't detected us yet. Captain Lee studied the formation. The coalition had changed their tactics after the disaster at Earth. Ships now traveled in smaller groups, constantly scanning, maintaining defensive positions. They'd learned caution, but they hadn't learned enough. Major Kim, Captain Lee spoke into her communicator. How many Marines do you have ready? 30 soldiers, fully equipped, Major Kim Yoonji replied from the hangar bay. We've been practicing on the captured coalition ships. We know their layouts now. Good. Prepare for boarding action. We're taking the lead cruiser. The Indomitable drifted closer, using the debris field from a recent battle as cover. When they were within 200 meters, Captain Lee gave the order. Now! Magnetic grapples shot out, locking onto the coalition cruiser's hull. Before the alien crew could react, Major Kim's Marines were cutting through the airlock. They moved fast, stunning crew members with electric weapons, sealing bulkheads, cutting off communications. Within 10 minutes, the bridge was secured. Major Kim stood over the captured alien captain. Tell your escort ships everything is fine, she ordered, her translator converting her words into the coalition language. One wrong word and my soldiers start venting atmosphere section by section. The alien captain's eyes widened. He'd heard the stories about human brutality. He believed them. He sent the all-clear signal. Target the other 3 ships, Captain Lee ordered from the Indomitable. Use their own weapons. The captured cruiser's guns swiveled and opened fire at point-blank range. The escort ships, caught completely off guard by their own companion attacking them, barely managed to raise shields before the barrage hit. 2 were destroyed immediately. The third tried to run but was crippled by a precise shot to its engines. "Boarding party to the damaged ship," Major Kim commanded. "Everyone else, secure this vessel. I want it operational in 20 minutes. This became the pattern. Human ships would hide, strike without warning, capture enemy vessels, and use them against their former allies. Within 2 weeks, Captain Lee commanded not just the Indomitable, but a small fleet of captured coalition ships. High Chancellor Vextar watched reports streaming in from across his empire. Convoys vanished, supply depots were raided, communication stations went silent. And always, there were stories. Stories of humans who appeared from nowhere, who fought with terrifying efficiency, who showed no mercy to those who'd threatened Earth. "They're like demons," one ship captain reported before his transmission cut off. "They don't just fight us. They turn our own weapons against us. They use our own ships. They hack our systems. They're in our communications. I don't know if I'm talking to my own fleet or to them anymore." Static. Vextar turned to his intelligence officer. "How many ships have we lost?" "In 2 weeks? Almost 3,000. But that's not the worst part." The officer pulled up a holographic map of coalition space. Red marks indicated recent attacks. "They're not just destroying ships, they're capturing them. Our intelligence suggests the human fleet has grown to over 700 vessels. Most of them are our own ships, crewed by humans or operated by captured aliens they've forced into service." "Impossible," Vextar said weakly. "How can they crew that many ships?" "They're not crewing all of them, sir. They're using automation. They've hacked our control systems and reprogrammed them. Some ships are just flying bombs now, packed with explosives and set to autopilot into our bases." Vextar felt his world crumbling. The Coalition had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries through superior numbers and technology. Now a species barely a century into space travel was dismantling his empire using nothing but cunning and ruthlessness. "What do the other Coalition members say?" The intelligence officer hesitated. 3 species have withdrawn their support, Chancellor. They're offering the humans separate peace treaties. They say this is the Thronix Empire's war, not theirs. Vextar wanted to rage at this betrayal, but he understood. His allies were cutting their losses. They'd seen what happened to those who fought humanity. On a captured Coalition station in the Outer Territories, Commander Han Jiho met with representatives from the 3 species who'd left the Coalition. He sat across from them in what had been Vextar's personal conference room, a calculated insult. "You want peace?" Han Jiho said flatly. "Yes," the Kelthrian ambassador replied. She was a small, furred creature who'd been terrified when the humans first captured the station. Now she just looked tired. "We never wanted this war. The Thronix convinced us humanity was a threat to galactic stability. We see now that was propaganda. So you're abandoning your allies?" "We're choosing survival," another ambassador said. "The Thronix started this war. Let them finish it alone." Han Jiho leaned back in his chair. "Here are our terms. You will provide detailed intelligence on remaining Coalition fleet positions. You will open your borders to human ships. You will pay reparations for the damage done to our colonies. And you will recognize Earth sovereignty without any restrictions." "Those are harsh terms," the Kelthrian said. "They're generous compared to what we'll do if you refuse," Han Jiho replied coldly. "Accept them, and you get peace. Refuse, and you'll learn firsthand why the Thronix are losing this war." All 3 species accepted. Back on Earth, Dr. Kang Murray worked in her laboratory, analyzing captured Coalition technology. What she found was both fascinating and disappointing. The Coalition had powerful weapons and sophisticated shields, but they'd grown complacent. Their technology hadn't significantly advanced in decades. They'd been content to coast on past achievements. Humanity, in contrast, had spent centuries fighting each other, always trying to find the next advantage, the next edge. Every war had driven innovation. Every conflict had taught new lessons. "Look at this," she said to her research team, pointing at a Coalition shield generator. "It's powerful, but it's designed to stop energy weapons. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. They've spent centuries perfecting these shields. But they never considered kinetic weapons? A young scientist asked. Why would they? Dr. Kang Mirai smiled grimly. Kinetic weapons are primitive, crude, old-fashioned. No advanced species uses them anymore. She patted the shield generator. Except us, and that's why we're winning. She began integrating coalition shield technology into human ships. By combining human kinetic weapons with alien defensive systems, she was creating hybrid vessels more powerful than anything either side had produced separately. Captain Lee Salmon tested the first upgraded ship personally. The Indomitable now carried both long-shot railguns and coalition shields. When a Thronix battle group tried to ambush her fleet, they found themselves outmatched in every way. Human weapons punched through their shields. Coalition weapons bounced off enhanced human defenses. This isn't a fight anymore, Lieutenant Choi Hyunwoo said, watching enemy ships retreat. It's a slaughter. Good, Captain Lee replied. They wanted to exterminate us. Let them feel what that fear is like. But she knew the real challenge was ahead, the Thronix home system. Heavily defended with massive orbital stations and the remaining bulk of their fleet. Taking it would cost lives, human lives. Captain Lee had lost 50 Marines in the fighting so far. Each death weighed on her. She received new orders from Commander Han Jiho, Operation Cascade, a plan so dangerous that it had a 90% casualty estimate for the assault team. But if it worked, it would end the war in a single stroke. Captain Lee called her senior officers to the briefing room. Major Kim arrived first, followed by Lieutenant Choi and Engineer Bae Jinho, who'd kept the Indomitable running through countless battles. We have a chance to end this, Captain Lee said, pulling up a holographic display of the Coalition's Central Command Hub. This station coordinates all Coalition military communications. Dr. Kang has developed a virus that will shut down their entire fleet's navigation and weapon systems. We just need to upload it directly to their main computer core. And that requires boarding the most heavily defended station in Coalition space, Major Kim said quietly. Yes. What are our chances? Captain Lee looked at each of them. Of completing the mission? About 50%. Of surviving? Much lower. The room fell silent. I'm not ordering anyone to go, Captain Lee continued. This is volunteer only. But if we succeed, thousands of human ships won't have to fight. Thousands of soldiers won't have to die. We end it here. Engineer Bae spoke first. I'm in. Someone needs to handle the technical work. I'll lead the Marines, Major Kim said. Lieutenant Choi nodded. Where you go, Captain, I follow. Captain Lee felt pride and sorrow mixing together. Then we'd better not waste this. Let's show the Coalition what humans do when they're backed into a corner. The Coalition command hub hung in space like a massive metal flower, its 6 arms spreading outward from a central sphere. Each arm housed military command centers, communication arrays, and defensive weapons. The central sphere contained the main computer core that coordinated every Coalition warship across the galaxy. Captain Lee Salmon studied the station from the bridge of a captured Coalition cruiser. The Indomitable was too recognizable now, too famous. The humans had painted their captured ships in standard Coalition colors and equipped them with proper identification codes. To anyone scanning them, they looked like regular Coalition vessels returning for repairs. Approaching security checkpoint, Lieutenant Choi Hyunwoo reported from the helm. They're hailing us. Put them through, Captain Lee ordered. An alien face appeared on the screen, bored and bureaucratic. Cruiser Harmony's light, state your business. Returning from Patrol Sector 7, Lieutenant Choi replied in perfect Coalition standard language. They'd been practicing for weeks. We took damage from human raiders. Requesting docking clearance for repairs. The security officer checked something on his screen. The identification codes checked out. The ship's profile matched. Everything seemed normal. Cleared for docking bay 12. Welcome back, the transmission ended. We're in, Major Kim Yoonji said from behind Captain Lee. She stood in full combat armor, her Marine squad assembled and ready in the hangar bay. 29 other soldiers waited with her, all volunteers, all understanding this might be a one-way mission. The captured cruiser docked smoothly. As soon as the airlock sealed, Major Kim's team moved. They walked calmly through the station corridors, their armor painted in coalition security colors, their weapons concealed. To anyone watching, they looked like a routine security patrol. Engineer Bei Jinho carried what looked like a standard maintenance toolkit. Inside it was Dr. Kang's virus, loaded onto a specialized drive that could interface with the Coalition's quantum computer core. He just needed to reach the central processing room and plug it in. Simple. Except the central core was guarded by 300 elite soldiers, behind blast doors half a meter thick, with biometric security systems that wouldn't recognize human signatures. Security checkpoint ahead, one of Major Kim's Marines whispered through the comm. Maintain pace, Major Kim ordered. Look bored. We're just another shift rotation. They approached the checkpoint. 2 guards stood at attention, barely glancing at them. Major Kim nodded politely as they passed. Then alarms began blaring. Security breach! Unknown biological signatures detected in Section 7. The guards spun around, reaching for weapons. Major Kim was faster. Her stun gun dropped both guards before they could raise an alarm. So much for subtle. Everyone move. We have maybe 2 minutes before the whole station knows we're here. The team broke into a run, abandoning any pretense of belonging. Marines kicked open doors, stunning anyone they encountered, leaving a trail of unconscious aliens behind them. They had one advantage. Nobody expected humans to be inside the most secure facility in Coalition space. Blast door ahead, a soldier called out. Engineer Bei ran forward, pulling out a cutting torch. Give me 30 seconds. You've got 20, Major Kim replied, positioning her soldiers in a defensive formation. Behind them, she could hear heavy footsteps approaching. Lots of them. The first Coalition security team rounded the corner and met a wall of human firepower. The Marines had abandoned stun weapons for lethal force. This deep in, there was no point in prisoners. Bei's torch cut through the blast door lock. Sparks flew. Alarm system screamed. The door groaned open just enough for a person to squeeze through. I'm through, Bei called out. Choi, you're with him, Major Kim ordered. Everyone else hold this position. Lieutenant Choi Hyunwoo slipped through the gap after Bei. They found themselves in the computer core chamber, a massive room filled with glowing quantum processors. The technology was beautiful and terrifying, pulsing with the calculations that controlled thousands of warships. There, Bei pointed to a central console. That's the main data input node. They ran to it. Bei pulled out Dr. Kang's virus drive and began connecting it to the alien system. The interface was different from human technology, but he'd practiced on captured equipment. His hands moved with trained precision, adapting connectors, bypassing security protocols. Outside, Major Kim's Marines were being pushed back. More security teams arrived every minute. Bodies piled up on both sides. A Marine fell, hit by plasma fire, then another. How long? Major Kim demanded over the comm. 2 minutes, Bei shouted back. The upload is processing. We don't have 2 minutes. Lieutenant Choi looked at the door they'd entered through. He looked at the virus drive, its progress bar slowly filling. He made a decision. Bei, can you finish the upload alone? Yes, but then do it. Choi drew his weapon and moved back toward the blast door. I'll buy you time. He slipped back through the gap before Bei could stop him. Outside, he found Major Kim and 12 remaining Marines fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. Coalition security had brought in heavy weapons now. The human position was collapsing. Captain Lee, Choi spoke into his headset. The virus is uploading. Request immediate extraction for Engineer Bei. Captain Lee's voice came back, tight with stress. What about you? We're staying to make sure it completes. Tell my family. Tell them it mattered. Choi. He shut off the comm. There was no time for goodbyes. He raised his weapon and joined the defensive line beside Major Kim. She glanced at him. The young tactical genius wants to die fighting? Better than dying old and bored, he replied, firing at an advancing coalition soldier. Major Kim laughed, a wild sound. I like you, Choi. It's a shame we won't get to share that drink you owe me. Inside the core chamber, Engineer Bei watched the progress bar crawl forward. 80%, 85, 90. Outside, he could hear weapons fire, screams, explosions. His friends were dying to buy him time. He thought about his wife back on Earth, his daughter who'd just turned 5. He'd promised them he'd come home. That promise was breaking with every percentage point. 95%. The shooting outside suddenly intensified. Then horribly it began to fade. Not because the fighting stopped, but because there were fewer human weapons firing back. 98%. The blast door buckled inward. Coalition security was cutting through. They'd be inside in seconds. 99%. Bay drew his sidearm. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew how to point and shoot. If they wanted to stop the upload, they'd have to go through him. 100%. The virus activated. Across coalition space, on 10,000 warships, in defense stations, in communication relays, in every military computer system, the virus spread like lightning. Navigation systems shut down. Weapons went offline. Life support flickered. Communications died. Ships that were traveling at faster than light speeds dropped suddenly into normal space, confused and vulnerable. Stations that had stood for centuries went dark. The entire coalition military infrastructure collapsed in the span of 30 seconds. High Chancellor Vextar stood on his flagship's bridge and watched every screen go black. Emergency lights flickered on. The silence was absolute. "What happened?" he whispered. Nobody answered. Nobody knew. They were adrift, powerless, defenseless. And somewhere out there, humanity's fleet was still operational. On the command hub station, the blast door finally gave way. Coalition security poured into the core chamber and found Engineer Bay standing over the console, hands raised in surrender, tears streaming down his face. "It's done," he said in broken coalition language. "It's over. They wanted to kill him." He could see it in their eyes, but their commanders held them back. The human was a prisoner now, a valuable one. Outside the chamber, they found the bodies. 15 human Marines had held a position against 300 coalition soldiers. They'd inflicted casualties of nearly 10 to 1 before falling. Major Kim's body lay on top of the barricade they'd built, still gripping her weapon. Lieutenant Choi had fallen beside her. The coalition soldiers stood in silence, looking at the carnage. These humans had known they were going to die. They'd come anyway. They'd fought to the last breath. It was terrifying and incomprehensible and somehow worthy of respect. Captain Lee Soman received confirmation of the virus activation, while simultaneously learning that her team was lost. She felt her heart break and her duty pull her forward at the same time. "Signal Commander Han," she ordered quietly. "Tell him Operation Cascade was successful. The coalition fleet is disabled. And tell him the price was paid in full." She stood alone on the bridge of her ship, watching the disabled coalition vessels drift helplessly through space. They'd won. They'd actually won, and it cost them some of the best people she'd ever known. The war was ending, but the victory tasted like ashes. The silence across coalition space lasted exactly 3 hours. Then came humanity's broadcast. Every disabled ship, every darkened station, every communication relay still capable of receiving messages heard Commander Han Jiho's voice. He sat in Earth's Strategic Command Center, wearing his dress uniform, medals earned through decades of service gleaming on his chest. Behind him, Earth rotated slowly in the darkness, beautiful and untouched. "People of the Galactic Coalition," he began, "your military is disabled. Your defenses are down. Your ships drift helplessly through space. You are completely at our mercy." He paused, letting the words sink in. "High Chancellor Vextar came to our world with 10,000 ships and demanded we surrender or die. He thought we were weak. He was wrong. On Vextar's darkened flagship, the former Chancellor listened to words that sealed his fate. Around him, his remaining crew sat in stunned silence. "We could destroy you," Han continued. "Every ship, every station, every world that supported this war. We have the weapons. We have the will. We have every justified reason to show you the same mercy you intended to show us." His expression hardened. "But we won't. Do you know why? Because we're not conquerors. We're not enslavers. We're survivors. And we've learned that the cycle of revenge only creates more wars." He leaned forward. "So here are our terms. Listen carefully because we will not repeat them. The Galactic Coalition is dissolved as of this moment. High Chancellor Vextar will be taken into custody to stand trial for crimes against sapient species. The Thronix Empire will immediately disarm all military vessels and submit to oversight by a neutral commission." Across the galaxy, billions watched and listened. All species involved in the attack on Earth will pay reparations according to their level of participation. These reparations will be used to rebuild what you destroyed and to support the families of those we lost. Earth claims a permanent seat on whatever governing body replaces the coalition, with full veto power over any military action. Han's voice softened slightly. To the species who withdrew from the war and made separate peace with us, we honor those agreements. You recognized your mistake and chose differently. That matters. To those who fought until the end, we offer this one chance at redemption. Accept these terms and begin rebuilding. Reject them and face the consequences. The broadcast ended with a single image, a monument on Earth showing 15 names. The Marines who died at the command hub. Below the names, an inscription. They chose to defend freedom. We choose to honor them by building a better galaxy. 6 months later, the galaxy looked different. The coalition was gone, replaced by the Galactic Commonwealth, a new organization built on principles of equal representation and mutual defense. The first meeting took place on Earth in Geneva, in the same council chamber where humanity had voted to go to war. Ambassador Park Daeho stood at the podium, addressing representatives from 47 different species. He'd spent 3 decades trying to prove humanity deserved a place among the stars. Now he had that place won through blood and sacrifice. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, he said carefully, but as beings who survived a terrible mistake and chose to learn from it. The coalition believed might made right. The Commonwealth will be different. Here, all voices matter. All species have equal standing, and no one gets to threaten extinction ever again. The hall erupted in cautious applause. Some species clapped enthusiastically, relieved the war was over. Others were more reserved, still processing their defeat. But all recognized the reality. Humanity had fundamentally changed the balance of galactic power. In a secure facility on Mars, High Chancellor Vextar stood trial. The prosecutors presented evidence of his crimes, threatening a sovereign species with genocide, ordering attacks on civilian targets, refusing diplomatic solutions. The evidence was overwhelming. Admiral Han Jiho attended every day of the trial. He sat in the gallery watching the alien who'd started the war face justice. On the final day, when asked if he had recommendations for sentencing, Han stood. Many people want him executed, he said. They want revenge for our dead. I understand that feeling, but revenge doesn't bring them back. It doesn't make us safer. It doesn't build the future we fought for. He looked directly at Vextar. I recommend life imprisonment. Let him live with what he did. Let him watch the galaxy become what he tried to prevent, a place where species work together instead of dominating each other. The tribunal agreed. Vextar was sentenced to life in a secure facility, watching daily reports of the Commonwealth growing stronger without him. Dr. Kang Mireille stood in her laboratory, looking at prototypes of new technology. She'd spent decades creating weapons. Now she was using her knowledge to build tools for exploration and discovery. The same principles that powered the long-shot mass drivers now propelled research vessels to distant stars. Do you regret it? Her assistant asked one day. Building the weapons? Dr. Kang considered the question. I regret we needed them, but I don't regret that we had them when the time came. The galaxy forced us to choose between slavery and survival. We chose survival. Now we get to choose what kind of species we want to be. Captain Lee Soman received a promotion to Admiral in command of the Commonwealth's new peacekeeping fleet. It was a mixed honor. The Commonwealth needed military power to prevent aggression, but everyone hoped they'd never need to use it the way they had against the coalition. She visited the memorial for her fallen crew members often. Major Kim Yoonji, Lieutenant Choi Hyunwoo, 15 Marines who died buying time for Engineer Bay to complete the mission. Their sacrifice had ended the war, but that didn't make their loss easier to bear. Engineer Bay had survived his captivity and been returned to Earth in the prisoner exchange. He'd received a hero's welcome, medals, offers of prestigious positions. He turned them all down and retired to a small house by the sea with his family. When reporters asked why, he said simply, I've seen enough of war. I want to watch my daughter grow up in peace. 10 years after the war, the galaxy had entered what historians called the Renaissance. Technology advanced rapidly as species shared knowledge instead of hoarding it. Art and culture flourished as beings from different worlds collaborated on projects. The Commonwealth had grown to include 73 species, all working together to explore the unknown regions of space. But nobody forgot the lessons of the war. In military academies across Earth, cadets studied the conflict as required curriculum. They learned the tactics that won the battles. They learned the sacrifices that bought victory. And they learned the most important lesson. Humanity survived not because they were the strongest or most advanced, but because they refused to give up when giving up seemed like the only option. Admiral Han Jiho, now retired, gave a lecture at the academy once a year. He was old now, his hair white, his movements slower, but his voice remained strong. "You'll hear stories about the war," he told the young cadets, "about our brilliant tactics, our devastating weapons, our victories against overwhelming odds. All of that is true. But the real reason we won was simpler than any of that." He paused, looking at each face. "We won because we were willing to pay the price that others weren't. Captain Lee's crew knew they probably wouldn't survive their mission. They went anyway. Thousands of soldiers fought against impossible odds. They fought anyway. Entire families said goodbye to loved ones, not knowing if they'd return. They did it anyway." He gestured to the stars visible through the academy windows. "The galaxy is peaceful now because we showed them that threatening humanity has consequences. But peace only lasts as long as good people are willing to defend it. That's your responsibility now. Pray you never have to fight like we did, but if that day comes, be ready, because the galaxy remembers what happens when humanity is pushed too far." In the Commonwealth Congress, species that had once threatened Earth now voted alongside human representatives on legislation to improve galactic infrastructure, support scientific research, and provide aid to developing civilizations. The former enemies had become partners, united by mutual respect born from conflict. One evening, Ambassador Park Daeho met with the Kelthrian ambassador, one of the first species to make peace with humanity during the war. They shared drinks and discussed trade agreements and scientific collaborations. It was routine, boring diplomacy. Park loved it. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd surrendered?" the Kelthrian asked. Park considered the question. "Every day. But we didn't surrender, we fought. And that fight changed everything. The coalition believed might made right. They believed smaller, newer species should accept their place. We proved them wrong. You terrified the galaxy," the Kelthrian said quietly. "Good," Park replied. "Fear can be a teacher. The coalition learned that enslaving others has consequences. That's a lesson that needed teaching." He smiled. "But now we're teaching different lessons. About cooperation, about respect, about building something better together." Far out on the edge of explored space, human ships encountered something new, signals from an unknown civilization, powerful and potentially hostile. The Commonwealth mobilized, but carefully. They sent